Thank you. Ms. Gluck, roll call, please.
Mr. Schneider?
Here.
Mrs. Madiker?
Here.
Mr. Shi?
Here.
Mrs. Peng? Mrs. White?
Here.
Mr. Mohan Patel?
Here.
Mr. Burrell Patel?
Here.
Mr. Rivera?
Here.
7 present.
Great, thank you so much. I just want to welcome everybody for attending tonight and also tuning in. This is an exciting night. I think that Dr. Bragan has worked really hard, putting together a really nice presentation for us tonight, a capital improvement plan for the district. It's district-wide. All of the board members have been working collaboratively on this, and I look forward to a really healthy discussion about how we can move this district forward and, dare I say, even solve some significant overcrowding problems. So without further ado, some housekeeping tonight. We are looking to limit this meeting to 2 hours. It will be 6 to 8 p.m. After we're finished with our discussion with the capital improvements, we'll discuss any other facility-related items. We will leave a period of time for public comment. If we're having our meeting up until 7:30, we will basically truncate it to 7:30, and then from 7:30 to 8 p.m. do public comments. So depending on how many people from the public are here, at most everyone will meet or speak for 6 minutes, but if there's many people, we'll limit that for the total of 30 minutes for everyone to speak. We want to make sure everyone has a chance to speak. So without further ado, Dr. Bragan, we're ready for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Board President. Is it okay if I use the podium?
Sure, wherever you're comfortable.
Good evening, everyone. Board members and distinguished members of the public and staff, I appreciate the opportunity to put forth a plan that we've worked on diligently for some time now. One of the things when I remember interviewing in the adjacent room here when I got the job was a comment during my interview was about overcrowding. And that was I aware of what the problem we had here in Edison Public Schools with our increasing enrollment over the years. And obviously at that time I was casually aware of it, but not as intimately aware as I am now. And the charge given to me then, I believe Mr. Shi was the board president then, and a member of the team was, hey, if you get this job, one of the things is you need to come up with a plan at some point how you're going to address that. And I think what we did today and what we're going to share with everyone is that iteration of that plan and bringing something to life that we hope will achieve our goal. Okay? So I appreciate you allowing me to speak about this evening. What to expect from tonight. So where did this information come from and how did we come to the presentations that we're putting forth? We had a lot of discussions with our administrative team, with our principals, getting information from them on exactly what their building needs were. We all have an idea what overcrowding is, and when we tour the buildings and we take a look at our schools, we know what we perceive to be where the areas are and where the concerns are. And that's accurate, for our perceptions. But for me, where the rubber meets the road is what do the principals feel? What do they feel in their building as the immediate needs, both in the short run, which I would say in accounting terms, in the short term is less than a year, right? And what is the long term, which is greater than a year? So we got that information from them. We reviewed the class sizes. There's some disparity on different sides of town with the class sizes. At Edison High School and J.P. Stevens, for instance, some of the class sizes of the academic subjects are much different on the sides of town just due to the limited structure in the building and the limited number of classrooms that we have to utilize. And one of the things that was surprising to me, more surprising than I thought, was talking about the current prices of construction. And we've all heard about increases and inflation and what's been going on since the pandemic. We probably realize it in our wallets, right? When we go to the supermarket, when we go to the gas station. But the building costs have gone up significantly, both the construction price as well as the price of materials and the prices of building, to the point where, again, these are, as we get deeper into our preliminary conversations with just one of our architects. But I was surprised to learn that, an average number, $500 per square foot for finished construction prices, and, that's not getting a Lexus, that's buying, a Chevy, was significantly increased from what it had been in just a few years ago. And so when we look at some of the numbers, they were higher than what I had initially anticipated and what was our previous ideas. But again, putting all that together, I think one of the important things is we have to put forth the information with the current hands that we're being dealt and put real numbers in that we think are accurate for today. If anything, maybe a little bit over where they would be, so that we don't want to ever approve a project, go out for bid for a $3 million project, and the lowest bid come in at $5 million, right? That doesn't demonstrate due diligence on our part. So, and then one of the other things we looked at was, our previously identified overcrowding needs. Those that have been here for some time know we've been working on this project. The board has for a number of years. We had 2 referenda that went out previously that were failed, but they did identify where the needs were. And so we took all that information into account as we move forward. So that being said, what's our goal? Right? The goal is really simple. It's to end the overcrowding. And we believe with this plan, in a short period of time, we're able to achieve that goal. And again, when I got hired, and since I've been here, we've been distracted by a pandemic that impacted the entire globe and took away from the overcrowding, because for a long period of time, 75% of our students were accessing their education remotely. And our teachers and everybody did a great job in transitioning and try to make that the best that it could possibly be. And yet come September of this year, we were back to the overcrowding. We were back to, J.P. Stevens having 2,700 students in the building. We were back to our Woodrow Wilson School being over 1,200 students. And when you deal with that problem on a daily basis, it comes back in your face that has an immediacy that can no longer be denied. This plan, we do believe, and we have it for discussion this evening, will help us put an end to that and provide all of our children with the optimal educational program to which they are entitled. So where are the needs? I'm going to go over it by school first, and then we'll talk about priorities and go on from there. But if you look at James Madison Intermediate, John Marshall, Washington, Lindenau, Ben Franklin, James Madison Primary, and Martin Luther King, those are our elementary schools. And you see 2 things there for the schools, and it's differentiated. A number of the schools need classroom space. And these are previously identified schools where we didn't have enough rooms to house the programs we currently have for the children there. Those are John Marshall and James Madison Intermediate that jump out at me. And you don't have to be a rocket science to figure it out. If you walk the building, those are the buildings that have portables on the outside, because literally our classroom space is overflowing capacity of the present structure in the building, okay? So those are immediate concerns that we want to address. Those are buildings where there's art on a cart, where their music instruction happens in the classroom. And for some of those students, they don't leave their classroom. We're used to, at least when I was a kid, you go to art class, you go to the music room. Those children, we don't have the opportunity. So those are the ones where you'll see classroom space. The other elementary spaces, with the exception of James Madison Primary, focus on the gym and an auditorium. That's what we're calling the structure. But please don't think of that just as a gymnasium. It's a room for large group gatherings that right now we don't have the capacity to do that. If you look at many of our elementaries, the one I actually went to as a kid is the same multi-purpose room when I was there, that you can pull the dividers down and make it into 3 small classrooms that we call a gym or a multi-purpose room. It really is inadequate. It doesn't meet the needs of the building to have a group in a large space area where we can get together, not to mention to have physical education class in an appropriate manner. And those rough estimates are the costs that I got. Again, that was from one architect. Obviously, when we move forward with this, we'll put out the prices and we'll get designs that are specific, that would be more tuned. But again, if I was going to estimate a price, I would rather overestimate. You look at, there's 2 things there in the James Madison Primary. I put FS funds because we're looking to do something with the kitchen area there too that definitely needs a serious upgrade. And that kitchen area funding we have scheduled for this summer would come from a separate fund that was generated from our food service provider, okay? And if you look at Benjamin Franklin, the cost is a little more there, because the plan that we were looking at, and I did talk to a few board members, we may alter the plan, but that plan had the gym, auditorium, multi-purpose area in the front of the building being renovated in that same space and then being expanded out. If we expand out, it requires some site work to reroute the driving and drop-off pattern. Okay. Next up is the middle school. And again, If you look at that, you'll see some common areas with the with the large group area. That's consistent at almost every one of our schools. If you go into the gymnasiums when classes are taking place, there are more children and staff in there than there should be. And the reason they're there is because it's the only place that we have to place them. And again, some of the other areas with that is when you have large groups for back to school night and things like that, we can't accommodate everybody in those one areas. So having an additional large group meeting area at all of our middle schools, we would say is very important and is much needed. If you look at John Adams, again, that's one of the middle schools that needs space. They need classrooms. So that's why that's identified there. And Thomas Jefferson Middle School needs about as much love as we could give it. If you pull up on the outside of Thomas Jefferson Middle School, it's not, what's the word that my realtor used to say? It doesn't have curb appeal, right? When you pull up there, it is something in need of repair, and I think everyone would agree. And not only from the exterior and how it looks as you walk in, but the office suite. You know, we're trying to run a professional organization where we can meet the needs of all our students and our staff. You got to provide people the right tools. You know, Mrs. Emden's room and Mr. Sajasi's room and where the two administrative assistants are is probably half the size of this room in total right here. It doesn't meet the needs for a building with as many students as it has. And then the high schools, Edison High School, you know, they're getting some renovation there with the auditorium as well as the cafeteria with the HVAC this year, is 10 classrooms. You know, their need when speaking with the building principal is a classroom space of about 10 additional classrooms. The other high school at John P. Stevens, I put the turf field on there. Some people ask why did we do that? Because we didn't pay the monies to have that done yet. That's in our plan to get done as soon as we get all the approvals. And obviously this year, believe it or not, you wouldn't tell from the weather, but it is baseball season and they're out there practicing that we can't do any renovation until that's completed. But the auditorium and the classroom space. And we picked 30 classrooms. We did have some conversations with our staff there, and that will be able to meet all the needs. And as we know from our last board meeting, some discussions we had with biology and other classes, that the physical plant at John P. Stevens limits what we can offer. And, you know, I know that's a further discussion as a board we're going to have regarding that, but if you have limited options, then you have to make choices on what are we going to fit in those classrooms. And, you know, at some point there's going to be a cost in programming and what's going to be sacrificed to make sure we can meet these needs. And as we discussed last time, that's a later conversation we're going to have with the board, but we do believe the additional classroom space is in dire need at John P. Stevens High School. All right, so if you look at that total, take a deep breath. Okay, $93.5 million. I'm going to say that again, $93.5 million. It's a lot of money, right? But we can pay for it, and I'm going to show you how. One of the things in our boards of education in the last couple of years since I got here, and some people have reminded me this, they said, Bern, you're in a district that's flush with money. Doesn't that feel good? And I say, yes, it does feel good. We're fortunate to be on the plus side of our state aid increases over the last couple of years. Very fortunate. One could argue that it's about time, right, that the state aid came up to the adequacy funding that it should have been. But through this Board of Education, I spoke to at our last board meeting, and the last Board of Education, those monies were dedicated to capital, which is great. It gives us the opportunity to do these things that we want to do. So in our capital reserve account, and our audit report is going to be presented at our next board meeting. So the reason I'm using the date of June 30th, 2021, that's where the audit was from last year. So at the end of June 30th, 2021, we have about $25 million in capital reserve. And basically that's money that's in the bank that we could spend on capital and building projects that will meet our long-term goals. ESSER's 3 funds, I know everybody heard about the monies we got from the federal government, the CARES grant, that's what that money is. A little over $7 million was dedicated on that money because we had to dedicate what we were going to use it for infrastructure and for HVAC specifically. So any project that we're going to work on that has an HVAC cost, it may not be that much in one building or 2 buildings, but cumulatively, that portion we're going to take from that 7, it's more than $7 million. Again, I'm estimating low to make sure we can get all the funds. I think it's actually $7.8 million. And then where's the rest of the money coming? Our capital budget, again, due to this board's position and the previous boards, allocation is over $19 million a year, okay? $19 million a year we have allocated to do capital infrastructure projects that are going to last more than a year. And in the past, that money's been used for the Lincoln Addition project, which is roughly a $9 million project. And those monies we can use on an annual basis. I'll talk a little bit further. We allocate about $4 million of that 19 to annual upkeep things that we'll talk about. So what does that leave behind? On an annual basis, moving forward, we have $15 million in capital projects. So for fiscal year 22, 23, and 24, if we take 9.5 of that, 15, add up all those with the reserve accounts, that comes out to $60.5 million. All right, the total project from the page before was 93.5. So that leaves $33 million that we still have to find, and we have to, have that money available to do the projects we desire. The remaining $33 million, this is how I see that we can get it. We can get a $25 million lease over 5 years, which is basically, it's a mortgage for 5 years. Without going to a referendum, a district is permitted to do that for a 5-year duration. $25 million, again, I'm overestimating, at a $5.5 million payment, comes out to $27.5 million over 5 years. I think our interest rate would be significantly less, but let me estimate higher just in case. So if you stay with that math, the 5.5 plus the 9.5 gets us to that 15 million that we allocate for capital every year, okay? So that's how we could fund that entire amount. It still leaves $8 million. The remaining $8 million we could budget, again, in the annual capital outlay account in year 4, 2024. With $5.5 million, which is the annual payment, right, for that, plus the $8 million leaves us to 13.5. Every year after that, year 5 of the lease, again, fiscal year 25, we would owe $5.5 million, and then we're free and clear. We'll be as we are this July. We will have no debt. We will pay off the last time we did this for building infrastructure. I think Mrs. Cluck, 518,000. I think $750. You told me at lunch today, right? So once we make that payment in July, we will be debt free, which is a good place for a district, but it's also a place of opportunity, right? If we have no debt, that means we are not leveraging as much as we can be for our purchasing power, right? So that's where we can get the money for this. So what are some of the key takeaways? Do you like how I have the guy diving over the line to finish the race? I'm getting close. No, he's diving over the tape. Come on.
Like he fell.
I hope I don't fall, but maybe that's the case, Mr. Shea. The total cost, including the financing, comes to $96 million. Again, that's an estimate. But the key takeaway is the overcrowding, as expressed to us in our classrooms, will be addressed. Will be addressed. And after that, all the capital monies that we have budgeted for can be used for the further enhancements and refinements of our existing structures, right? We have buildings, Edison High School, I think, was built in 1955. Thomas Jefferson was 1959. Lincoln, somewhere around that time. Lincoln's getting an addition, but still, there's a daily and ongoing maintenance that we have to do. And when we are proactive and address funds to that moving forward, we don't have to come to this scenario where we have to expend $96 million if we expend $5 million every year to replace windows, doors, floors, walls, bathrooms, so on and so forth. So once we fund all this, God willing, we're all still here, in year 5 moving forward, we'll have money to continually refine that process and move forward. So the priorities as we see them, as anyone I think knows, John P. Stevens, I would argue, and I think most people would agree, is our most crowded school. On whatever metric you use to define overcrowding, it would be John P. Stevens. That one warrants immediate attention, and we want to try to get those classrooms built as quickly as we can. The middle schools, I would argue, would be in the same situation regarding those large group areas. If you go there during school and you see what they try to do in their current gymnasiums, they need more space. Absolutely, that's unequivocal. The elementary schools, as I said earlier, James Madison, John Morris, and John Adams as well at the middle school. They need the classroom space. We have kids, we're literally busting out at the seams. We are busting out of the walls that we have children in portables because we don't have space. So that needs to be addressed, and I would argue that that's a priority. The second priority is, have them listed there in order, is Edison High School, Benjamin Franklin, Washington, Lindenau, Martin Luther King, and James Madison Primary. In Edison High School, some people argue, no, that's just as crowded as John P. Stevens. Well, it is crowded. It doesn't have as many students, 500 or so less. In conversations with the principal there, their class sizes aren't as large as John P. Stevens. They're not at the upper 29, 30, 31, and 32 children. And while it will be crowded, their need isn't as pressing. So if we could wait on that one until year 2 or 3 to begin, in conversations I had as early as today, as late as today with Mr. Ross, that's doable. So again, in the number of projects that we're proposing here, we can't do them all at once. It's not possible. We can't get them all done at the same time, so we have to prioritize. But we shouldn't take away from this, and I think this is important. And again, I inherited this, and with Mr. Colobus's work and the board's work and our facilities committees over the years, we've dedicated funds on an annual basis to address some of our concerns of our aging buildings. Bathroom renovations we do on an annual basis. This year they were a little behind schedule, not because we didn't do it or we didn't allocate the funds. Literally the construction people couldn't do it in the summer. They were inundated with work, couldn't find workers and supplies. So many of those, like Thomas Jefferson Middle School, for example, had 2 gang bathroom replacements, allocated the money, not paid for, but we PO'd it. And it's going to take place when school's out in the summer because they didn't have the materials to get it done this summer. So that we're going to continue to do on a regular basis. Classroom and laboratory upgrades on a regular basis. We can't do everyone. You know, we meet as an administrative team with our principals, November and December, and we get their priorities. And then we triage from there, and we decide what we can do and what's within our budget moving forward. Door replacements, the same thing. I think at Thomas Jefferson, Mr. Colobus was telling me we're down to about 20 doors. We replaced all the doors from the original doors and things like that. Driveways, parking lot, sidewalks, we dedicate upwards of $400,000 a year to upgrade that. Some could argue that John P. Stevens lot in the back for students is in dire need. I think Mr. Patel mentioned that to me, Mr. Mohan Patel, at our last meeting. And you know, that's one that we have in the hopper now to get fixed as an as-needed basis as well. The roof replacements, that's not a pretty addition. That's not something people want to talk about. Or, hey, we just spent $2 million on roofs. Isn't it great? You'll never notice it. You'll never see it unless there's a thunderstorm and you're not getting rained on, right? Desk, furniture, smartboard. We don't even call them smartboards anymore, but I figured I'd put that term up so everybody knows what that means. Our new line boards, our devices, whether they're Chromebooks or MacBooks, they need to be upgraded on an annual basis, right? We have kids going through our system. They have a lifespan of 3 to 4 years, and we have to upgrade those. So just on those budgeted items alone, the capital projects there, that's about $3 million a year. And we allocate that on a regular basis. This program and this proposal that we're presenting today will not take away from that. That will still continue. This is really interesting, and I know some of the members of our Budget Planning and Oversight Committee participated in this meeting a few days ago, Monday, I believe. And Energy Savings Investment Plan is basically an idea to finance and leverage some of the savings we'll generate from reduced energy costs to upgrade our systems, to put more efficient boilers, more efficient HVAC units, univents, lighting, use some solar where it's appropriate, and get all this new equipment at no cost to the taxpayers. At some point, like in your homes, your water heater is going to break, right? Your boiler is going to go down. Your air conditioning is going to need to be replaced. And for most people, that's a pretty significant outlay of capital and a cost. This is an opportunity for us to use our anticipated savings in getting more efficient devices to fund for those replacements. So there'll be new items, new boilers, new unit ventilators, new lighting at no cost to the taxpayers. But I do want to just make the caveat to this. If we're paying $2.5 million a year in our current energy charges, we're still going to be paying that amount. But a portion of that amount will go towards having all of our equipment replaced, or a portion of it, I shouldn't say all of it. Okay. All right, what's next after that, right? So you say, oh, you got all that done, and then what's next? And when I say what's next, I don't mean that we would wait to address these concerns until the 4-year window when everything's done financed. Everybody knows that full-day kindergarten is an initiative we're implementing in September. We're very proud of that, and it's something I think will be a great benefit to our community. But almost immediately after that, the next thing we want to do is preschool for all, or full-day preschool for our students. And that would have to be done in a phased-in process, because if you look at our preschool population, our universe is what they call it, how many possible students could you have? It could be 2,400 students. We have about 1,200 students in a grade level now as we are entering into first, second grade. And our biggest grades are about 1,300, 1,350. So that's 2,400 children, 3 and 4. That's a lot. So I don't envision that being in one space, and I don't envision our elementary schools immediately having room for those children. But some of the options are our Savior's Church property, which the board purchased last year, gives us a nice piece of land and a nice property that we could use adjacent to the Menlo Park Elementary School. Ms. White's been talking about the Stelton School since I was 4 years old. No, I'm just kidding. It just seems that way sometimes. But an option like the Stelton School is something that we would look at in order to be part of that. And, we've also had preliminary conversations with some township people about some of the vacant properties in town that are coming off the ratables, that perhaps we could have something that was mutually beneficial, where we would rent spaces, convert them into preschool areas, and just pay a rental fee that there's not a capital cost, and then they get back on the tax rolls. It's a win-win for everybody. And then obviously after that, we would look to do the 3-year-olds, but that's going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of management. One thing too, there are preschool expansion monies. It's throughout the nation, but specifically in New Jersey. So we could possibly see us doing this at really no additional cost to the district, which is great. At least no additional staffing costs. There may be some renovation costs for capital and things like that. All right, so what's the timeline? What I'd like to do is have a discussion tonight and see if we could get the board approval of this process to move forward and give us the go-ahead to start getting things in line. Currently, we have 2 board-approved architects, and both equally capable teams. I think, as you saw from the number of projects, that would not be something I would want one team. Maybe we'd even look to getting other architects involved. It's a lot of work. And as I'm reminding myself sometimes, and when you spread yourself very thin, it's very hard to do everything well, right? So we'd want to maybe parcel that out. I'd love to have some of these plans in phase 1, the architectural plans, because the process would be the architects would give their marching orders and say, listen, here's what we'd like you to do. Go over to Thomas Jefferson, give us a renovation on what that front would look like for renovation, what would the office space look like, what would that multi-purpose large group area look like. Come back with a design or 2 to the board. The board says yay or nay, we like that design. If you remember the Lincoln project, USA Architects brought 3 proposals, and I think the board picked the middle one, which was the cheapest bang for the most amount of classrooms, if I remember. And then once we get that, if we can get that approved by the summer, they can go out to bid anytime after that. So it's a lot of work. If we get them out to bid in the summer, we'd hope to get contracts back in the fall. And the ambitious timeline would be to have shovels in the ground at winter break, as long as it's not frozen. And that's all I have. I'm open to questions. I'll stay up here. I'll sit on wherever you guys want me to.
Yes, I'll start with a question. All right, can we go back to the yearly allocation slide? Yeah, you just missed it.
This one?
No, one after this. The yearly budget allocation.
That one? Or this one?
No.
These are the beginning projects. That's the budget allocation. That one?
No, there is. Yeah, this.
Sorry.
No, not that one. The budget allocation. Sorry, I missed it.
This one?
Yeah. So this one says 9.5 million for 22 till 25, and you said it takes roughly 4 million for every year cost, like roofing, paving, and things like that. Is it roughly a 4 million cost for every year?
I think I said 3 million, and I was including in there the infrastructure upgrades for our devices,
Okay.
which right now our annual lease for our MacBooks and our Chromebooks comes to about $1.5 million. So the roofing projects come to about $2 million on an annual basis. And you're actually right, it was $4 million. $2 million for the roofs on an annual basis we allocate in that ballpark. Depending on what type of roofs and how deep the repairs are, that could be less, right? We don't want to really go over that though. And then the other capital infrastructure for like the classroom upgrades and the paving and other things that need to be done, the doors on it, is about $2 million. So yes, that's about $4 million. That's accurate.
Okay, so that brings us to, let's put a couple of million here, there, 14 or 15. So at this point, we are very close to the 19 million that we allocate to the capital. In a scenario, if we lose state aid or if it reduces, which I feel less likely because of it should go up generally, and we're going to have full day kindergarten, so that's likely to increase with all the other situations and circumstances. If we lose state aid, what's the plan in that scenario?
That's a tough question, Mr. Patel. I thought you'd ask me a softball for the first one. Give me one I could hit out of the park first. If we lose state aid, and reductions in state aid obviously impact the budget, right? So we just got an increase of $11.8 million, which is very significant. But let's say next year, two things. I don't anticipate that going down because the state has worked now, this is year 6 of a 7-year plan to bring districts up to full adequacy that weren't at adequacy. I know many board members that have been here over the years have been fighting for that and are very aware of that. So I don't see them retreating on that without some catastrophic event happening, like another pandemic, right, or something like the housing market crash of 2009 and 2010. However, should that happen, let's say next year the state aid gets decreased by, I'll make up a number, $5 million. Because of how prescient this board was and the previous board in going at a 0 tax levy cap and giving all of the increase to the taxpayers, right? So the tax levy, this will be the 3rd year in a row, this proposed budget, that the tax levy was $235 million. I've never heard of that anywhere. But because they did that, we have what's called banked cap. So we can raise the tax levy 2% a year. The budget, the governor's office and the state DOE deems that as being fiscally responsible. If you go up at 2%, 2% of 235 million is about $4.7 million. So if we lost 5 million last year, I would argue and advocate to the board that in addition to the 2% tax levy cap, we would probably recommend our raise for next year, an increase in the budget without an additional state aid. We use some of that bank cap so that we don't have to compromise the overcrowding. There's another thing that's on the table. Again, in the numbers, like this year, the numbers aren't, we don't know the actual numbers until after the governor gives his address, right? And we were fortunate the address was at our school this year. We knew it in real time. But with our increase in full-day kindergarten alone, we are predicting that without any other increases in state aid, we're going to get $4 million because of the increase in enrollment of 800 students. Not to mention, we do believe there's at least 200 to 300 students that didn't come to school for fears during the pandemic. They didn't move, they didn't go anywhere, they homeschooled for legitimate reasons on their own, that will be back as well. So I do anticipate with the full-day kindergarten and the increase in enrollment getting back to where we were, that we will have an increase in state aid next year regardless. So even if we lost 4 million, we're anticipating getting 4 million more because of our enrollment. So in order for it to impact us significantly, it would have to be $8 to $9 million decrease. And if that happened, I would recommend that we use some of the bank cap. Well, and that would also be a board decision. At that point, the board makes that choice, right? Do we want to continue on this plan, going down this path to end overcrowding, which is what we've all heard for the last 10 years or so? Or do we want to retreat from that and not raise taxes and keep giving the savings, but keep the schools being overcrowded? That's a decision that we would cross.
Right. And will we still be in a position to borrow in year 23, 24, 25 after this, or this is the maximum we can borrow?
That's a really good question. The lease purchase for, again, it's really a mortgage, can only be for 5 years. So you would not be able to do that until that 5-year time was depleted. Unless you wanted to go at that, use that R word, which none of us like to mention, you could always go out a referendum and ask for the support of the community in a referendum, and then you could, the sky's the limit on what you would want to charge for that or what you'd want to do. The only benefit to a referendum is you do get, depending on what you're doing in the building, you get some of those costs are refunded from the state, 10 to 40%, depending on the activity.
Okay. So now the plan includes a lot of things, so that's good. Thank you so much. I think you worked nights. You were awake all night long for many nights to put this together, right? So I appreciate all the hard work on this. It includes a lot of things. However, what I would like to see in this plan between now and next month, and is we don't want to, because this includes, well, it includes pretty much all the schools. I'm going to leave James Monroe apart for a second, that one being very nice looking school and newer one. But we don't really want to miss out on any requirement that are presented at this point, right? So that being said, let me ask you the question, and then I'll go over 4 requirements of 4 different schools. Is addition of a bathroom included in the yearly one, or that's only renovation of the bathroom?
No, that's on an annual basis to update bathrooms.
Okay, so that's included.
Not addition, update.
Update.
Right, but addition is not included.
You have to,
No.
you have to find room to add more spaces, right?
Mr. Patel, it would be like, yeah, exactly. It would be if there was some sort of renovation that was required or existing square footage.
So,
Right.
But if there was a suggestion as to where you would want it, either now or
Right,
before we
so,
finalize this plan.
you raise a good question, though. Just so you know, in the areas where we're adding the 10 classrooms and at JP the 30 classrooms, they do include bathrooms.
right,
That includes
so,
bathrooms. There has to be so many facilities for so many rooms.
okay, so I will go over the list, and maybe I'll also email it to you, but just
Sure.
for the record, so you can. So Woodrow Wilson, I believe orchestra and dance classroom may want to be added to this list. Washington, the playground has to be on the rear of the building. That was with the principal's list. I would not prefer to leave it to the yearly one, if we can include in this one while we are doing this, and maybe the cost will still be the same because you are having a buffer in the cost. Woodbrook, 4 classroom space, GNT, Spanish, ESL, and 1 more classroom. And addition of a bathroom in the newer addition of the Woodbrook, and blacktop to the side of the building for outdoor recess space. And Washington School, Ben Franklin, the pavilion to extend front and side of the building. However, I had this written down earlier for today, but if you are saying that with the plan that you had for Ben Franklin, if that's included, then that's fine.
Okay. It would require some adjustment of the front there, but
Right.
we do know there's some issues there with the parking. I think, actually, Mr. Shi proposed a year ago a road, or some parents spoke to Mr. Shi about putting a road and the traffic actually going around the back by that Tanglewood path and coming up the other side. So we could look at all those options.
Okay, so if we can add these things before the plan is finalized, President?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
And one more suggestion I have, so this is the list that I thought off top of my head. We appreciate Joyce Schiff Freeman, Mrs. Badowski, Mrs. Conway, and Maria Orchid to come to the meeting, because this plan is for everyone, for the residents, for the students, and we are trying to do something big here, something great to resolve overcrowding. End of the day, the residents and students will benefit, so that's awesome. My suggestion would be, President and Vice President, you have that community relations meeting, so maybe have one and take some suggestions. Maybe we find one more thing which we missed out over here. Not everything may be applicable, but speak with the community if there is something else we are missing out on this one, so that it can be added before we finalize this plan.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Patel. Something I just wanted to add to you had a few questions about the financing here. Our board can only do so much as our board, right? So we're 22, 23. We're approving a budget. We can go as far as to approve a lease agreement. We could approve allocation of the dollars we have in the bank now. However, some of these numbers that you see here are future budgets that would be approved by future boards, right? So we hope that we set the vision and we all collectively decide this is what the general direction we'd like to go. However, things could change. Maybe the board members will be very different up here a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. So with that said, there's just certain, assumptions that we don't want to assume too much as we look beyond the cash we have in hand. additionally the potential for that $25 million lease. Is that correct? Am I understanding the financial part of this correctly?
That is exactly correct,
Right.
Board President.
Right. So that's why I think that phase one and that your priority list is good, because then we can really, I think we all have general agreement that the classroom space at JP Stevens is so vital. So by using some of this, maybe that's where the lease money goes. That would be a great way to get that locked in right away to get the shovels in the ground. Mr. Patel, you wanted to say
Yes,
something? I'm sorry.
thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, congratulations on presenting this. Very nice. And we're working on a lot of schools. I just have a few questions. In regards to the expansion plans and everything that we've discussed today, did we take into consideration what we were looking at the demographics studies that were done previously? And does that address the issues that were presented at that time with everything that we're doing at this moment? Because I believe when we looked at the demographics studies previously, our priorities basically at that time were for JP being 1, Edison High School 2, JAMS 3, JMI 4, and JM 5, right? According to that, are we going through that that study phase that what we were discussing in regards to what would be the issues? On top of that, we have other issues that are coming up, right? Where we have the students that are increasing with pre-K and kindergarten, as well as the 500, 300 students that are actually out from COVID or whatever purposes. And on top of that, all the other overdevelopment that we're doing in the township with the overcrowding of multi-unit housing that is going up left and right. Are we going to be allocating that, the additional student count into this study that you're doing, or this budget that we're increasing? I have more questions, but we'll start off with that.
Was that one question?
No, I thought it was one.
You learned that from Mr. Shi. Great point, though, Mr. Mohan Patel. And we did take into account the previous demographic studies as well as the information we got from the previous referendum. Right, we were looking at addressing the needs that were identified then, and we had a lot of information, so wouldn't be wise not to use it. So we did use that. A couple things here. And everything you said is accurate as far as the students coming in. We anticipate we'll have more students. We'll be over 17,500 students next year with the additional kindergarten full-time equivalents. It's a lot of kids. It's a significant increase. And the students that may be coming back from COVID. We did account for that. And the projections as we see it, again, and I think, I want to say around the fall this year, we talked about getting another demographic study. I do think we need one. The problem was we couldn't agree on one that would do it the way we needed it and not use that Rutgers number, that 0.04 kids each location or whatever it was, because we realized that wasn't accurate. We know that from the greatest indicator of the future is the past, right? We've seen other building and they had more children in there than anticipated. But what we did do is we did talk to the principals at each of the buildings, and we got from them. This is a triage, right? We're hemorrhaging. We got blood coming out of 8 parts of our body. So we want to stop the bleed so we don't die, right? And that's probably a little bit too graphic for something I'm trying to be positive about. But once we do that, right, then we got to fix the other things. Like John P. Stevens High School, they need some large group area spaces as well. They need some cafeteria additional spaces. They need all of that. But tomorrow, if I could, September 2022, they need classrooms. So this is just the beginning, and I would hope that at some point we can come to a consensus, we meaning the community and the board, on let's get it started. This isn't the end of it, because it's never over, right? Any of us that own homes or anything, it's never over. When you're done painting the Golden Gate Bridge, it's time to go back and do it the other way, right? That's life. But this, from the information I got, Mr. Patel, you're 100% right. We have a lot of information. We had the data out there. We used it. We tried to triage with the principals. What is your most pressing need? And they actually aligned to what our needs were listed before. The schools you listed are our number one priorities because those needs are the same. And I'm not a bright guy, but I could walk into James Madison Intermediate and look at the portables on the side of the building and say, hey, we need more classrooms, right? At John Adams or at John Marshall, because we could see it. They're there. So those needs didn't go away. As we look at the demographics information that we have, now we have an indicator from first grade through 12th. So the only unknown right now is kindergarten. Because we know how many kids are in first grade, we know how many are in second grade, we know how many are in third grade. So if we know how many are in second grade, we got a pretty good idea of how many that are going to be in third grade, and so on. The bubble is moving up. The bubble's about 1,350 students per grade level. It's now in 9th and 10th grade at the high schools, and it goes down in 4th grade to 1,250, 1,200. So we see that moving through. So we do know that that's coming. Will the full-day kindergarten entice more people to move into the community? It might. And then that number that has been fairly consistent at 1,200 for the last couple of years in the lower elementary may start creeping up. Then we'll have another plan. Yep. The best thing about a 5-year plan is you get a new one every 5 years. That's what I learned when I went to the Soviet Union.
I have more questions, though.
Go ahead.
Sure. Okay. If we could go to the slide where we have the high schools, where is the need? Okay. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we see that Edison High School, we're getting 10 classrooms for $10 million, roughly about $1 million per classroom. And when you take a look at the classrooms that are allocated for J.P. Stevens, it's 30 classrooms at $17 million. And the rest of the classrooms for all the other schools, you're about 10. You're seeing an allocation about $750,000 per classroom for the other schools. You're seeing about $1 million for Edison High School, and then for J.P. Stevens, you're seeing about $550,000 per classroom. Can you let me know why that discrepancy for each classroom? Why is the change like that?
If I didn't know any better, I would swear you went to architectural school, because you know the answer. And I appreciate you pointing that out for me, giving me a chance to elaborate on why that would be. What we're looking at there, it was I didn't plan it. I didn't plan it. I wouldn't have said that if I planted it. But that's a great question, Mr. Patel. It really is. And if you just look at the numbers and the data, which is really all that I provided you guys, you'd be like, wow, how could that be? The proposal for that, again, this is proposal stage. This is nobody's approved anything, would be to mirror that front row of classrooms. If you remember a couple of years ago, I think you were with us when we did a little tour there, and to put the classroom, additional 15 classrooms in the front there on the other side of the bus run. And that would be the first floor. You could put a second floor on top that would give you 30 classrooms. Now, when you go on top of a structure that you're building on the bottom, it's cheaper than building the initial structure. So that's why that cost per classroom is like $200,000 less than the other. I'm not saying that's the ideal plan or that's what you would all approve. That's what we looked at as potentially being the quickest way to get 30 classrooms at John P. Stevens. As you know, Mr. Patel, because I know you're intimately involved in some of the ideas we had, that whole place is on the wetlands. Very limited opportunities to put space, and we know that, right? Yeah. So that was a way, and again, I'm not saying that's the final plan. That was a plan we had, and to get some rough ideas for some numbers, to put 30 classrooms there fairly quickly.
Just to go off of that point, with that plan, that did not address the issue that we already have in JP, which is the flow that is.
It did not.
It did not. So with that being said, if that doesn't alleviate the flow in the school, and if it doesn't, circulation basically, and if it doesn't help with the cafeteria and whatnot, how is that going to help? Because if we're starting off at that point and we're just putting the building off there on the side, it doesn't make any sense to do that, first and foremost, right? If we're able to do what we were looking at the plan when we presented in November or December, whenever it was in the wintertime, I think that would address it. If we're able to go into that realm, I would look at that more and see if we could start off in that direction before we go into the sidewall, because that is going to add on to the traffic issue if we do put it on the side.
Okay, fair enough. With just one thing one thing it would address with the flow, though, right?
Right.
And what Mr. Patel's talking about is the flow across the different buildings. One of the proposed additions had connecting one of the upstairs wings in 2 locations so that we would increase the flow around, so you wouldn't bottleneck in a few areas. It would decrease a little bit in that you'd put more kids in a different location, so they all wouldn't be coming from the other side of the building, and you'd spread them out a little bit more, and there would be obviously a connection to the existing structure, and spread the children out a little bit, but it wouldn't address the major issue.
Okay. Well, one big question in regards to the budget. So we're going out for $33 million for the bond, not the bond, for the funding for.
25 is
25,
what
right?
I listed.
So what is the maximum or we're allowed to go out for without going for a referendum?
Well, I don't know that there is a maximum, so that's something we could explore. I did talk to some people in the field. The typical number that they go for is 20 to 25. And, you know, I know at one point we did talk in the fall about possibly going at 50. So that's something we could revisit, but what the information that I have on that is that if you go higher, there are literally less banks that are able to bid on it because they don't have the resources. So the sweet spot's 20, 25 million, what I'm told. I'm not in the financial realm, so I don't know it intimately. But I think that's something we could look at, and if there's other possibilities. One of the things that was shared with me, again, not having intimate knowledge in that space, was that collateral matters. So it depends on how much collateral, because as a bank, as you know, in your homes or anything, they're not going to give you more money than you have equity in the house, because if something goes awry, they would lose it. And with schools, it's similar, but the problem is if we default on a loan, they can't take J.P. Stevens High School. So it's not exactly one for one like it would be in your home.
Correct. The only thing I say that we're seeing a lot more in ratables coming in from the township level as well. So you're going to see an increase in the budget coming forward, right? So I'm seeing there is opportunity where we can actually leverage our funding. We could get more funds with the interest rate being where it is right now, and it would behoove us to do that at this moment in time. And we also have the allocation already in the budget, where when we were going to go for the referendum, it was going to cost $8.3 million to the taxpayers every year, which was allocated already. And we already have that in the budget allocated at $9 million at this point for Lindenau School. So if we had passed the referendum, it would have been paid for and would have been all schools already in place where we need to.
I tried to tell people that,
I know,
Mr. Bedell.
I know.
But no one listened.
So with that being said, with the funding that is available and in the budget at this point, would it behoove us to go for the extra funding, make sure that we get extra stuff done that we need, so we're not just putting a Band-Aid right now and then just fixing it for a little bit and then we're putting more after later words?
It's a great question, and you know, I'll defer to the board, but if I am permitted the option to explore where we're going after this, we will look at talking to the people that are in that space and ask them what are our possibilities and what are our costs, and I will bring it back to either this committee or the full board. Well, this is the full board, and we'll have that discussion. Because if we can get a little more and we could pay for it in the same financing as we allocated, and do some more of those things at John P. Stevens or other schools, why wouldn't we, right? If we can do it.
Right, because the reason why I say that is the cost of the construction and everything is going to be in the same place and the same value right now. When you do this at the same time versus go back and have the architect draw it out again and then again and then again, additional costs are going to be added onto it. So if we're able to get more funding with least amount of, hurt,
Yeah.
it doesn't cost the taxpayers right now.
Well, we've been saying that, I've been here since December of 2019, and that's, 2.5 years or so? And since that time, the cost of construction has gone up $200 a square foot. Think about that. Every year we wait, it's not getting cheaper. And, some of our community was frustrated that we haven't done anything yet. We haven't been able to solve this problem. Here's an opportunity to solve the problem, the immediate problem. Not every problem, but the immediate problem, where we could actually have tangible changes within 2 years that impact everything, from curriculum, to classroom sizes, to space for different programs, for enhancing everything. Does it fix everything? No, of course not. We're too big an organization to fix everything quickly. But it takes that inertia that, again, since I've been here, we've had inertia not to do anything. And it's nobody's fault. It just hasn't happened due to, I don't know the reason. But it seems like we're at a place now, it may be in my time here, well, the pandemic had a lot to do with it. I shouldn't say that. It basically took 2 years off all our lives because we were on pause, right? And just trying to get through the day-to-day. But we're at a point now where we have an opportunity, due to a lot of different reasons, the financing, the money we have that we currently have in our reserve accounts, the impetus we have to get it done right now. I think we're at a fulcrum where we get the ball rolling down this hill. It's just going to keep going, and we're just going to keep getting better and better and do more for our children.
Awesome. One more point I want to make. in regards to the elementary schools, we have James Madison Intermediate and James Madison Primary, and that is in the same campus. If we're able to, and we have allocated gym and auditorium costs about $7 million for the both of them, right? If it's possible, why can't we just make one bigger auditorium/gym in between the two and have a connector where they're actually going to get benefit from it, and you get rid of some of the overhead at that point?
You're always a grand thinker. I like that idea. If there's a way to put where that playground is, in my mind, right, and I'm not an architect by no means, where that playground is off of JMP, and somehow connect the two and have a humongous place that both could use and then we could use jointly when needed, we'll look at that. I have no idea what that would cost. I don't know about infrastructure, but I like the idea.
And
That
also,
would
you
hurt the
put
project.
FS funds in here. If they're already giving us funds, why are we considering that as a cost to us?
No, it's not I just put that in there, that kitchen fund, I wanted to make a delineation that that's not part of anything. That the kitchen fund will come from our account for food service.
So do we decrease that by 3 million?
It wouldn't be by 3 million, it would be by the cost of the kitchen, though.
Okay.
And I did put that in a parentheses, so we knew that would not include that cost.
Maybe we could have Mashios donate some more money to it.
They could donate to the kitchens.
Yeah,
Get
yeah.
rid of it.
There is some
Not
requirements.
donations, that's part of
There is some
part of the
requirements
thing.
with
Yeah.
that money, but we do have some ideas on how some of these spaces, we could use some of that money for kitchen equipment and incorporate that as well, and that's a further discussion. This is just the preliminary.
Just questions keep on coming up. I'm sorry. For the turf field, is it possible if the county or anyone else is able to use the turf field whenever it's not in use for us, would they be able to fund that portion of it?
We tried, and Mrs. White was part of that conversation with Mr. Karabinchik, I think it was, where initially in the past, if there was use from the public at some time, they would fund it, and he said they're no longer able to do that for schools. Am I right in summarizing that?
Perfectly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just won't do it right now. Oh, I'm sorry. No, they stopped doing it. They had in the past, but now they don't do it any longer. It has to be totally public, nothing to do with the Board of Ed. But while I'm on here, I just want to say thank you to all of you who put this together. And Dr. Bragan is right. It is a start. You know, you have to, just begin somewhere. I love this program because it touches every school in one way or another. And I think you were 6 when I started with Stoughton School.
That was great.
All right. Just one more question, and then I'll stop at this last question.
I bet you don't.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Patel.
If you could go to the slide where it shows for the middle schools. So we have office suite at $1 million. Are we doing this across the board for all the schools, or is just going to be just here first and whatnot? And how many suites are we getting for $1 million for that?
Again, that was an estimate, and I overestimated it. I don't think it would cost that much, but I would argue that if you get a chance, and Mr. Patel, I know we did because we toured the buildings when you first came on the board. The Thomas Jefferson office space, it's probably the worst office space we have. And it's not just that it's not a nice space, right? Because, I don't want the Taj Mahal for our principals. They'll never leave the room, right? If we have all that. And that's not what we're saying. But you want to be professional. 100%. When you walk into that office as a parent, and Mr. Snyder's a parent there, he maybe could add to this. You walk in that office as a parent, you don't get a warm, fuzzy feeling like this. The people are great. The secretary's there. The administrators are great. The guard's great. But the place is disgusting. And I don't know a better word for that.
There's also the security person
Is
is in the
back.
hallway
Because there's no room.
at a desk because there's not even a lobby.
Yeah, I know.
So I even find it to be a security issue, whereas our other buildings have, the ability to have a more vast lobby with some more space. God forbid, a nefarious person wants to get in. There's very little
So
space
to-
at Thomas Jefferson.
I'm
at
not
all.
even sure if he has a desk. I think he just had it on his lap.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Laptop.
little thing, and the reason it's not further up, though, is what Mr. Snyder said, is the reason that the security person isn't further up is there's 2 reasons. One is the entrance to the office is right to your left there. You walk in, and it's literally right there, so you can't do it. And the right is bathrooms.
Yeah.
So that's why she's further back in the hall. I think it's a woman there now, but it's been a man in the past. But that's all part of it too, is the security of that infrastructure. And you need a space to conduct business. You really can't get things done without the space. So
Yeah.
we think it's important. I think that's a little bit on the high end, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then the front entrance there, if you know that, I don't know, it was a rain garden or some project from, it might have been a Rutgers donation or something, but I don't know. I'm not a gardener either, but like I could look at something and tell you that it's ugly. That's ugly.
2 more questions now. Thank you.
I told you. I told you it wasn't going to be one.
So, in regards to facelifting, is there something
What are you
else?
saying about my face?
Not you. You're a very handsome man. Right. But my question is, in regards to the facelifting of all the schools, is it possible that we could allocate some funding for at least some fresh paint on a lot of the walls that are
Yes.
needing it? Plus the ceiling tiles
including
that
here.
need to be.
Great point, though.
Dusted off
On the
or
ceiling
whatever
tiles
not.
and some of that infrastructures, again, I remember when we did our tour, which seems like yesterday, but that's over a year ago.
I know.
One of the things in the ESIP, again, we haven't picked what the company's going to, which one it's going to be or where we're going to go with, but one of those projects is the lighting and the LED lighting and all that. And with that, we would do the ceiling tiles in unison with that. So if you go down our hallways, many of our hallway lighting are the old fluorescent lights and things like that that would be upgraded. And when you do the lighting, because you're going to be taking down the ceilings anyway and redoing the electricity, you would do it at the same time. And just the light and the different tiles make a world of difference. You know, we do
Even the
believe
height,
that.
we can adjust at them, right?
And make it higher and do whatever we want. You know, and some of the what's old is new again, right? If you look at some of the buildings built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, almost every hallway has skylights
Yep.
for natural light. By the 90s and early 2000s, almost every skylight is covered up. You know, they leak, they do whatever, we close them off. And it's such a shame now because any new construction that's done now, windows are a primary component in skylights because natural light is better for kids, it's better for energy costs, and it's just not, it's humans like light, right? So any and all that, yes, we would, Mr. Patel.
Awesome. I think that should be it for now.
You
But
say- you
if
say
I come
two
up with something,
questions.
I know. Oh wait,
You
wait,
only
wait.
asked one.
Say he just took me into another trance right there with the facelift. So fresh paint, nice lighting, and I guess I'll leave it for now and come back again. Thank you.
I have a couple of, should be softballs for you. Air conditioning. Is it safe to assume that every new classroom that you have on your plan will have air conditioning?
That would be safe to assume. Any new structure, I would argue that
These common spaces.
would
with
all
the-
be air conditioned. That's part of the issue as well, is when we do have those heat days, when some of our buildings that aren't air conditioning, it provides a large group area where we could have classroom times rotate through when we have to do that in the need be. But yes, I don't know of any commercial or school building that was built in the last probably 30 years that didn't have central air conditioning as a component, because it's efficient now, where we can do it at about the same cost it costs us now to heat the buildings.
Good. Talking about food service, just to reiterate, we've talked about this offline, but so our food service agreement allocates funding for us to get, based on the amount of meals that the food service company serves, they invest money back to us into our district. The challenge with that is that they can't just build a huge extension on our buildings, right? So what I would propose is when you do these common spaces, these large common spaces, at any point, build a shell that's 4 walls, plumbing and power, and then, which is the least expensive part of a kitchen, and then have this company come, or Machio's partner, come in and actually bring in all of the fittings and the investment that they've promised us, that they're saving for us to give. They want this, right? So they'll be able to give their people a better place to prepare their children's meals.
Great idea.
So at any point that we're able to provide this extra square footage, we should do that. Also, just in general terms, I just wanted to point out that I look at your plan here as the first phase being truly that triage mode that we've been talking about, where it's really solving the overcrowding right away. And it's going to enable our staff to really instruct the students in the proper way, get class sizes where they should be, offer the programming we need to be. That parlays into the conversations we've been having at the previous board meetings. But that second phase, I think, and alluding to what Mohan was saying, is the amenities involved with some of these projects, and what if we can borrow a little few extra dollars, and it's with no impact to the taxpayers. We're doing this with a zero tax levy so far. If we have the ability to borrow a little extra or use our money more wisely and add some amenities, our students deserve amenities, the things that you see when you go to other districts. This is not a bells and whistles project. This first phase of this project should not be considered a bells and whistles.
Correct.
But our students deserve bells and whistles at some point, right? So we should really, hold ourselves accountable to a plan that we are triaging and we are providing our students with a standard that we feel is proper. However, we should hold ourselves to a standard that's higher. And once we prove to the community, we prove to ourselves, we work together with the administration that we could do this, we then look towards some of these really fun things that our students will benefit from academically. So, that's in a nutshell how I'm looking at this, as this is, to Mrs. White's point, a start to a very exciting project long-term. And we could only set the table as much as we can set it. We can have our initiatives, and we use the monies that have been saved for this and the monies that we're allocating this year, and we hope that we set a standard that future boards can really embrace. Ms. Madiger.
So I like the part which Doug just said, that we are achieving this with zero tax levy so far. So that's something to keep in your mind.
Kudos to all of you. You should take credit for that.
So now coming to my questions, I mean, you did say that we are overestimating the numbers because we ought to do that because you don't want to be cash strapped. And what are you going to do if the estimates come out higher? Would you have any idea in terms of how much? Because that would partly address Beadle's question that he brought up, like what if there is a reduction in state aid? Then, we are already overestimating. So in all probability, it's not going to be 93, it's probably going to be less. Can we say something safely, or it's too early to?
I would say it's better to go estimating higher, but that doesn't mean we're allocating higher. So really, when would we know more? Two phases. When we get the drawings from the architect and what the proposal for the actual structures will be, right? And that's a board discussion. If they're like most architects, they're going to bring you 2 or 3 and say which one you want, right? This one's going to cost this much, we think. This one's going to cost this much. And then, if it's up to me, I pick the Chevy or the Ford, not the Lexus or the Cadillac, right? And, the board will make that decision at some point. And then when we go out to bid will be the second time. Obviously that's when like, for example, when we went out to bid for the auditorium at Edison High School recently, we only had one person bid. That's pretty frightening because they could have made any number they wanted and they would be the lowest bidder. We could always reject it. Right? So, but they came in at a fair price. I want to say that off the top of my head was 1.4 million, something, 2 million, I forget. But it was within what we thought that price would be for that project. The danger is if we go too low, right? Let's say we're talking about the classrooms at 7.5 million. And I know I'm hearing myself talking about millions like they're pennies. We know and recognize how much money that really is. But when we say that and we anticipated being at 7.5 million and at some point we go out to bid and it comes back, the lowest bid is 11 million, then what do? You can't do the project. Or you have to significantly scale it down or change what we're doing. So in my mind, again, just Bernie Bragan, I think it's better to overestimate it and then come in less, and then we decide, okay, now we have for each one of these, we have an additional 200,000. Where would the board like to allocate those funds?
I completely agree with that. I just wanted to kind of get a sense of, how much, so that, should a problem happen, we do have that buffer.
We'll know more, just the costs, and I didn't delineate it by square footage and all that we did. We estimated $500 a square foot, and we put in another 20% for soft costs, so that's $600 a square foot. In my mind, that's very high, but I'm not an architect. I don't know what's out there right now. I know what Lincoln is, and we actually got the Lincoln project committed a year ago. It would be more than $9 million now. I know that.
Right. I mean, right now, everybody who reads a newspaper knows that there are supply chain issues, and
Yes.
whenever there is shortage, of supplies, then the demand goes up and the price goes up. And so hopefully this is kind of a, this will come down.
I hope we time it right so we're on the downside of the curve, but you don't know.
The inflation the last 1 year was like 5.9% or something, which is kind of unheard of in a very, very long while. So hopefully things will go down. The second question was the same as what Doug has already asked. I wanted to know about air conditioning. So all these gym, cafeteria, whatever that we are doing, they'll all be air conditioned.
Yes.
My third question is, when you're talking about gym and auditorium, what exactly would you be doing? What does this plan include?
Didn't get into the weeds, but what the charge I gave when we talked about it was not just the gym, but enough space for a full court basketball, right, which is what we would want for our schools, as well as a stage area, and where the students can do their concerts and performances and things like that. The delineation that comes next is, do you want seating space? Do you want bleachers? How many bleachers do you want? We didn't delve into the woods on that. So what is there is large space areas with an option to have a small kitchen somewhere, however we can maybe do that in the strategic locations for needed, and a stage, because I think that's important. If you look at James Monroe School as well as Woodbrook School, those large group areas add so much to the space. And those were recent additions that were done on a lease purchase type thing over 5 years.
So will the square footage increase for the gyms and the just?
If you added space for like bleachers and stuff, you'd have to increase the square footage, yes.
Okay. Then my next question is, would you have any sense of timing for completion?
Well, I gave that rough idea of trying to get shovels in the ground over the course of next school year. So some of these projects, like the Lincoln project, is going to be a year from the time the shovels hit the ground till completion. I would envision some of these would be much quicker. Depends on supply chain, right, and if there's any delays with that. But if we get the approval and we start the process rolling in the next few months, I'd like to have everything done in 3 years. Everything. I think that's reasonable, but I can't always predict the future accurately, depending on other circumstances that may happen.
Okay. So, I feel that obviously, anybody who has watched me before, I always used to talk about the third high school, but that's okay, because now we are seeing that we need a short-term solution. We are in we need to be in that emergency mode. We are seeing that, the biology classes got cut, the physics classes got cut, and we're going to be seeing this all the time. So I think this is a terrific plan, and it's going to immediately at least solve this problem that our students would be facing should we not go ahead with this. So I think with that, I believe that's all I have.
Right, so as you said, Dr. Bragan, the numbers may change, obviously, and that's something everyone should understand once the plan is reviewed with architects. So let's plan to put everything that is missing out in this plan. And also, I would suggest strongly to seek input from the community and make a finalized plan. And yes, the phase 1 pretty much looks good, because those are the schools that are identified as #1 targets for this year. And then the budget changes in year after and year after. But I don't want anything to be left out of the plan as of now. And obviously go for the phase 1, but phase 2, phase 3 should have those plans in place right now when we are voting on it. So thank you.
So, Doug, can I just say something?
Sure.
So I will schedule the performance monitoring committee soon after the spring break, I guess. What's the date? March 30th. So that people can participate and give input on this facilities plan. And I like the numbers, like 17 million and 30 classrooms, and I like those numbers. I like to see those numbers. So it just makes me happy that it's not a lot of money.
Okay.
In that sense.
Okay. Mr. Shi, Mr. Rivera, Ms. White?
You want to say something?
Yeah, I'm just pleased that we're moving forward. We got some ideas and we want to get the ball rolling. I think our kids deserve the best. So I'm glad finally you came up with a plan. It's well thought out. I'm glad you used the census data, the referendum, and you actually used our ideas from the tour. So it makes me feel like you're listening. So I appreciate you and your team's hard work for this, and I'm looking forward to this plan and see where it goes.
Thank you. It's always a team effort, you know that.
Jeannie?
No, I'm good.
Okay. President?
Mr. Shi.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Brigham, for coming up with this plan. And we always know that the devil is in the details, right? So this is, overall, I like the direction we're going. And the end of the day is you need to put a price tag with all of this. So I guess the next step is to get our architects to start to design this, and then we have some more solid idea as to how much the price is. I see that we are committed $15 million a year for the next 5 years. So you saw my text with you after we had a meeting, is if we can't go out, borrow a little bit more, if the payout is also the same, $15 million, let's go on and see if we can secure a little bit more money to add more things into this thing that we might miss, right? And I like to have this one, just like Biro said, let's put it out there. Let's get some public input to see where we're missing. I'm glad the principals are committed to this, and I hope after they see this whole thing, they're still the same. And especially Charlie, he's not going to change his mind on the 10 classrooms at Edison High, because that was, the previous, that was on the first phase. Just on the other note that the people are concerned about the money, I'm looking at our budget right now, that it's preliminary budget. We have $19 million allocated for building improvements, and we have about, $1.8 million for instructional equipments. So we are committing $15 million, so $14 million left. And you heard Dr. Brigham saying that we budget about $2 million for roofs. And for the folks who are on the ESIP discussion on Monday, we have talked about the company, when they come in for energy saving, if they can put solar on top of the roof, they will actually fix the roof for us. So again, this with the ESIP that's going to come, and this construction's ongoing, there will be a lot of collaborations between whoever's doing this. If we can look to reduce some of the roof budget, if it just happened to be, the ESIP will pick up, then we can have more money allocated to this. Again, this is all detailed stuff, and I'm not going to go to details on here, but there's just some concern for the folks that we do have additional funding available if it comes down to it. And some of the stuff like Biro you mentioned, and some of the stuff like parking lots and stuff like that, those are on another line item. So that's for building improvements and stuff like that. It's not part of this 1.9 thing. So fundings are still available, and just a lot of details need to be worked out. And I'm fine with the direction overall that we're going on the bigger picture, and then next step is finding out the details.
Board
Thank you.
President?
Yes.
Thank you. I agree.
Sure, sorry. If I may add
Patel.
something. Agreed with the moving forward that we're doing right now, and it's something that we all have to look at. As a township, what is our most valuable asset, right? If you take a look at it, your home is your most valuable asset. You actually do all the refined work to it and upgrade and paint and all that stuff because you value it. Same way we're valuing our schools, and all we're doing right now is basically putting more value to the houses that we own. So whatever we need to do to make sure that we get it done, we should do it. The other thing is you're investing in your students and the future of the generation, right? So we want to make sure that they get everything they need as well. So with all the plans that you have going on forward and the money that we're going to be allocating, and if we could actually get more funding and use it to upgrade our schools a little bit further than what we're doing right now, that's what I would be suggesting that we do. Thank you.
Board President, just one
Thank you.
quick
Yes,
comment.
Mr. Shi.
Again, this is the first time for a lot of the board members who are not intimate on these discussions, and it's more of a brainstorming thing. Okay, so I hope the residents is not going to ridicule some of the board members' comments. Maybe they're not mature or whatever. I know this town. Whatever you say, they're gonna blow it 20 times. But again, this is brainstorming session, and let's give this plan some time. Let the people comment on it. Whatever comments, we'll take it. We'll find out what is the best solution is. There's
Yeah.
no bad ideas. There's no do not attack someone who's any residents or whoever come up with any new ideas.
No, you're right, Mr. Sheehan. One of the things one of the risks of doing a committee of the whole is that it's public and everybody listens and everything. And I find it to be the right way to do it because I think we all need to be here. We all need to listen. And I'm okay. It's just, to your point, it's a brainstorming session that it is a working board meeting.
Yeah.
So as we sit here and we talk about different ideas, I don't think that there's any bad ideas. And especially as we talk about things like money and as it impacts the taxpayers, until we sign on the dotted line and we vote, I want to make sure that the public is aware that this is an evolving topic, that we should not be afraid to say things because we're going to be ridiculed. It still is a working board meeting.
Thank you.
So,
Just a quick question, Ms.
Yes.
Clark. When's our next board meeting and our caucus meeting, if you can just let us know?
right after spring break. It's the 23rd or something like
Yeah.
that.
26th.
Just one.
26th.
April 26th. We
So-
had to combine that. I had a conflict, that's my apologies, with the
No worries.
caucus meeting. So we combined it with April 26th. It'll be a
It'll be a long
6
one.
o'clock start.
Perfect.
6 o'clock start like we do in the summers when we have a combined meeting.
Very good. So this way the public knows it's April 26th. Thank you.
Thanks.
It should go out tomorrow. Mr.
If there aren't any other board member comments, we can move to public comment. Okay, would anybody from the public, Mr. Venkat, welcome here. I have a
Thank-
clock here, it's 6 minutes, okay?
You want to read your stuff?
No, go ahead. We
Okay.
have 6 minutes, I think
have a
6 minutes will be appropriate, we'll have enough
Okay,
time.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bragan. I think truly appreciate the details. And I think whatever I said, like Jerry mentioned, it's a public view and I'm not correct. And at the same time, I have a right to raise those questions. So please take it with a pinch of salt and, correct me if I'm wrong. But a couple of parents pinged me that, the middle school that is getting $1 million suit, is it because our president kids are studying in that school? So I don't think it is correct. I know that, agree, but I definitely want, our president to say that he doesn't have input, it is only your input and you drive that because,
Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt and I stopped your clock, okay?
yeah.
I just want to point out that I have one vote, okay? Everybody's vote is the same.
It doesn't work like that. In the politics,
Okay.
if you really see, it doesn't work like that.
Mr. Venkat.
You're
I'm starting-
heading this crew.
I'm starting your clock again.
Okay, sure,
Thank you.
please go ahead. The reason why they say that is, Dr. Bagan, John Adams Middle School, they don't have a library. So library is converted into workout room. So people are asking, does a principal needs $1 million suit versus the kids needs the library? So compare it, that's where the people are coming in. I don't want people to throw mud on Doug that just because his kids are in that school, he's getting it. Why not John Adams Middle School is not getting it? The same parents has communicated to me that there is a science teacher in the high school, it's in high school, is running it with $700 for a whole year. How come a budget of science school teacher has only $700 and they have to count the pennies? So I think that I can share the details as well. And the next one is, Brian Rivera, I like the way that our kids deserve best, but now we don't have two trailers that we caught biolab. One parent said that you can cut the fat, worst case you can cut the flesh, but you guys are cutting the bones. So for students, you're cutting the bones, $1 million suit doesn't gel well, with the parents at least. Then the biolabs, I think, Dr. Bagan, you helped me out to start the biolab in high school. The way that it stopped last year, because we didn't have a $2,000 to pay for a teacher. So for 2,000 in JP, we couldn't start a bio club last year. We postponed to next year. Now you are spending all these millions of dollars. And how come a bio club, a basic thing for any medicine students or any sciences students, is not there in JP? The same thing that I see robotics club. And I think I would mention the name of Anita and others. They're selling ice creams, popcorn, and all the stuff. And we couldn't even give $5,000 to them. There is $29 million funding increased. I think, Biral, I didn't want to cut you. I think you guys did a good job in the tax increase. I would give credit. But I would object that you didn't have it's not a zero budget increase. You increased budget by $10 million with the additional 29. You guys has a 0% tax increase, that I agree, but its budget is increased by 10%. When you have a $29 million Biral, I want you to look at the high school funding of the clubs. The teacher should not be surrounded with $750 that they cannot maintain that. The libraries are not there. There are hundreds of problems that PTOs are working. And I think you guys need to look into it. I think I didn't want to politicize this. What you guys showed, Dr. Began, we completely trust you. But these minor issues next year, if the club is not allocated just because that teacher we couldn't pay $2,000, if the science project or a competition is not attended because there was not enough funding, and the library books are not available, and there are what you call poor kids that cannot go to the library on the weekends because libraries are closed on Sundays. So many kids are depending on the school library, and we don't have school libraries in middle schools. I hope you take it with a pinch of salt, think about it, keep 10% of this $29 million, $2.9 million for the clubs, because my son used to go and get into 3 clubs in the middle club, who is a junior in the private school. My daughter is attending only 1 club. Whose fault it is? Why are we cutting the clubs for the middle school kids? Why are you cutting the funds of the teachers? Why are we not giving it? I'm all for, best in class buildings and everything. But the minimum thing for those poor kids is having a books, good food, and good education, and getting into a good school. I think our rankings are down. If you think these spending is going to increase our rankings, support it. And also, before you take one public school, put all middle schools, rank them. This is what the work is. And this is a dire need. It has only 85% is gone. So now we cannot survive without having this. Then we will buy that as a parents. But now as a taxpayer, I'm truly concerned. I think, Biral, if you can spend 10% of the money to the clubs, that I truly appreciate. And I hope you will plan and you will raise that for the kids' sake, because you know that Edison High School kids are suffering not having a robotics club properly. Thank you.
President, can I respond?
Dr. Bregan first.
Yeah. Thank you, and I appreciate your comments, and you're always passionate, so I appreciate that. And you're passionate about what you're trying to do for the kids, for the district, as we all are. Raised some good points, though. The John Adams Library, just one of the reasons that library was taken down, really dismantled, was for classroom space. They needed the rooms. So when we get the additional classroom space, we would redo the library and have another space for them. So that's something we have to look at, and that is one of the things that happens when we don't have enough classroom spaces. When you look at the competing interests, do I want to take away an 8th grade science class, or do I want to take away one of the special needs classes that we need in that space, or do I get rid of the library that doesn't necessarily have classroom allocated all the time? It's the best of bad situations, right? And so that was made. So that's one of the things with the classroom spaces coming back, we get a nice state-of-the-art media center. We could do that as well. That's a great point. I could safely say, I don't want to speak for the board president, that the office suite was included in there, and I'd love to take you for a tour. If you ever want, I'll take you down to all the middle schools, and I'll ask you at a board meeting, Mr. Venkat, what's the worst what's the worst office suite at the middle school? It's in bad shape, and it's a bad shape for a variety of reasons, but your point's well taken. When you look at John Adams' office, it's a professional place. You walk in there, you got the little place on the left, right? Yeah, it looks like you could have a cup of coffee at Starbucks. You go to the right, Dr. Valentine's suite's there and everybody else's. That's absent at Thomas Jefferson. And Board President Snyder didn't ask me anything about that. I'm telling you that as my word. But I'd like to show you the place if we get a chance.
We trust you as long as.
Yeah, but I'd like to show you though, because I'm a visual kind of guy. Anyway, and the club funding, I'm 100% on board with getting as many clubs as we can do, to have as many children participate in. Just one of the things with the clubs is, though, those are negotiated with the contract. I'm sure the association would work with us if the board said, hey, you know what? Maybe let's see if we could fund another 10 clubs at each school. There's money involved, right? Because we have to pay the teachers something to do it, and they're entitled to their money for their time. But we're open to that conversation. I am, and the board members that I speak to, I think are open to that too. But I can't just say, okay, I want to do this because Bernie Bragan's a robotics guy. I want to give them $10,000 each. We have to have a discussion. We have to talk about it. And if we want to add additional clubs, the biology club, the chemistry club, the physics, I would have a club for everything, the chess club, for the ones that don't have it. There's money involved, and we just have to work with the association to agree what that should be. Thank
Board
you, Mr.
President.
President.
Mr. Biro Patel.
Yeah, so I was going to say the same thing. So Venkat, thank you so much for bringing the robotics club up. And I pretty much remember Anita's conversation that she asked about that. And we discussed that in one of our budget meetings, a preliminary budget meeting before the preliminary budget was presented. But good news is the preliminary budget is not a final budget. It's still preliminary. We will have meetings shortly before the finalized budget. What we will do is, why don't we make a point that next week when we have the other meeting, we discuss, we allocate 5 minutes for this discussion, and if needed more, but let's all as a committee look into it, right? Thank
Board
you,
President, if I may add, in regards to the $750 per classroom teacher allocation, can we increase it since inflation has gone up, the prices of every goods have gone up? If they could increase a little bit for the funding for the classrooms, for the teachers, that would be a little bit better for them right now.
Just
Thank
on
you.
that note, I would say too that, everybody in this audience knows our budget is $300 million. That's a lot of money, no matter how you look at it. So if someone needs anything, if you hear, as a community member, as a board member, a teacher says, hey, we don't have enough money for supplies, for microscopes, for, I don't know, whatever else supply that we might have, pencils, whatever, have them tell their principal, because I know this board, because I know from the time I've been here, anytime I've come and said, hey, listen, such and such needs another, I'll make up a number, $5,000 for some new microscopes at Woodrow Wilson. They've always said, get it, Bernie, get it. And we'll find the money. As someone said, if it's $750 is not enough for whatever they need, let us know. Let us know.
I want to make sure we get to everyone. Ms. Joyce?
Good evening. I hope the discussion's running quicker because I know we are at dire need. Yes, we do. We need the classroom. We need them now. Phase one, my favorite, always leaves. But anyway, moving right along. I don't think that you should at this point ask for extra money, because when you ask for extra money, that's when the community, that's when all of them start like saying they go against your budget. Now, the way you have it written out now in the 25 that you're bargaining for is a good number. I'm just saying, the reason why people turn down referendums and the reason why they turn down budgets is because because they can't, that amount of money. Because we got a lot of retired people, we got a lot of people on fixed incomes. And so I'm just looking forward to us moving forward. And I don't know if the other person or anybody noticed it. I know, because I've been to just about every school in Edison. And I always looked at TJ. It's always been like the worst, all right? Because you can go right into John Adams, you can go into all the rest of the schools, whatever. So I know it's not a personal thing, because if it was, he would have said it a long time ago when his kids were growing up. I mean, when they were younger, not that they're growing up now. But I just think that we should kind of move forward with the things we're getting ready to do. And like he said, with the libraries, we can have a library back if we get enough classrooms to have the students in, and because I'm very, very partial to libraries. I think it's very important that we have libraries. But when it comes to a lab or a library, I have to go with the lab. Yeah. All right. So far, so good. I mean, I don't call out people's names and stuff because I always see the board as a whole body. And I see them as working collectively to help us, the community, for all of us to move together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Joyce.
Joyce, you are wearing Thomas Jefferson Middle School colors today, by the way. I just wonder if that was an accident. I don't know.
Any other Ms. Conway? Mr. Minesh, you're on deck.
Elizabeth Conway, 20 Netherwood Circle. I just have 3 things. The first thing is, I'm going to just bring up it because it's quick, is the TJ. I think you should rename it, to be honest with you, instead of calling it a suite. Call it the main office, yes, or something along those lines. It doesn't sound as elegant, but it's necessary. I've been going to that school for years, and the only time I ever go in that school is the entrance is to the gym. I wouldn't even know where to tell a person where the office is because I've had to always go roundabout to get to the office to begin with. Whereas the other middle schools, You walk in, the main office is right there. So you might want to just twist that word because it gives visions of extra money because you're calling it a suite. Yes. Number two, for the lease payment option, I recall at past meetings when I was on the board, when we spoke to people, they thought that 20 to 30 million was an optimal amount because we had initially talked about more money. And they seemed very iffy about going much higher. So I think it's safe to go right to the middle between the 20 and the $30 million. So I would give the kudos to that dollar amount. And the third thing is been a concern since the announcement was made about full-day kindergarten. We've been talking about full-day kindergarten for a number of years when we took away full-day kindergarten because we needed it for the classrooms. We haven't done anything to full-day kindergarten to add classrooms, to my knowledge, but we are now going back to full-day kindergarten. So if you have, say, 4 kindergartens at any given school, and I'm not going to name it, well, now you're going to 4 full day. Well, now you need 4 classrooms. Could you kindly, because this is a facilities meeting, could you kind of explain how that's happening? Because I would really cringe if we're thinking along the lines, well, the numbers in kindergarten are down. Well, why are the numbers down? Because they were not full-day kindergartens. So if you have 15 or 16 kids in a kindergarten class, which is amazing because, to be very honest with you, when I got my job back in the year 2000, I was hired to go in and help supplement the kindergartens because the 2 teachers that I was helping had 27 and 28 children in their kindergarten classes. So I was going back and forth to help them, and that was ultimately my end to getting a job in Edison. But I would hope that we're not just putting those 15 children from 2 half-day classes together and going up to a 25 or 26 kindergarten, because those initial years are so vital for the kids. Anything more than 20 in a kindergarten class would be sinful. So if you could explain where you're getting these extra classrooms from, because we also have to remember, if now people are taking their children, say, out of one of the Catholic schools, because now our public school has full-day kindergarten, well, if I'm going to send my younger child to a full-day kindergarten now, I'm going to pull my older child out of 2nd or 3rd grade. So they're going to the same school. So that's an additional item that needs to be considered. But right now, I would just like to know, because any child coming into kindergarten, I would want them to have the best atmosphere and it not be overcrowded by just combining classes. Because right now, it's not a vision of what it's going to be once you tell the parents it's full-day kindergarten. You're going to definitely, and you said the number before, where are we putting these kids if we're going to full-day kindergarten is my biggest concern. And before I go, I would just like to give kudos for this presentation. This was one of my items that I've been crying and moaning about for years. We need a plan. Where are we going to get the money? How are we going to pay for it without the big R word? Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bragan?
Yeah, always very poignant, Mrs. Conway. And your point about the suite is well taken. You know, as I look at that, that doesn't sound right either. And it definitely would not be what we would call a suite. So we will address that. Great questions, though, regarding full-day kindergarten, and it's good that we ask them in public so everyone can hear the answer. Our kindergarten enrollment as of today is around 750 students. Our first grade enrollment is around 1,250. First grade is around 1,250 across the district.
1190.
1190. So it's around 1,200, but 1190 if you were an accountant. And so
I'm looking.
we took, I know you have the numbers, Mr. Shi.
Yeah, you know which one I'm looking.
People have to keep me on track, so I appreciate that. But, so what we did when we did the estimate, if we were using that 750 number as what the number would be for full-day kindergarten, I agree with you, Ms. Conway, that would be foolhardy. Because we recognize, as well as any of us that had young kids that only had half-day programs when our kids were in school, is that often you want a full-day program. So you either you go to a parochial school or you spend some other time not enrolling in the program in the district and you come in first grade. So the numbers that we use for our projections internally were what our current first grade numbers now. We actually used 1250, which is a little higher than what it actually is, as Mr. Shi pointed out, at 1190. So we're aware of that. And so the average class size we're looking at across the lower elementaries are in the low 20s. Now, it's not 15, but it's nowhere near 25, 26, or anything like that either. And we do feel, and in conversations we have with our administrative team and staff, that full-day kindergarten, the benefits for the kindergarten teachers to work with the same group of kids, even though it might be 21 students as opposed to 15 or 16, the benefits for working with the same children all day more than outweigh the costs of working with a smaller group at 2 sessions during the day. But in no way would it be combining 2 groups of 15 into classes of 30. Kindergarten classes, as we project right now today, are 21 students. And that's enabling every building to have full-day kindergarten for a full complement of a projected first grade number. So that's where we are.
Thank you. Mr. Manesh?
I didn't answer your question, Mrs. Conway? What didn't I answer? So if you don't mind.
Sure.
But where are you putting kids?
Oh, the physical nature of where the...
Oh, the classrooms. Okay, that's a good question. Well, many of our classrooms, as we were going over and planning the budget for this year, right, one of the first things we do in November and December is we sit down with each building principal and we go over the projections for next year based on enrollment. As I said, with the exception of kindergarten, we know exactly how many third graders are going to be because the kids are in second grade. And for the most part, our attrition rate is very low, and it's about the same number. Some students move out, some move in, but we don't normally get 500 more students from second to third grade. It's pretty standard, so we know about what next year's third grade will be because of this year's second grade. Same thing at fifth grade. We know what fifth grade is going to be because we know how many kids are in fourth grade. So as we started crunching the numbers using that data, we realized that many of our upper elementary and other class sizes were very low, 10, 12, 11, 13. And that's just when full-day kindergarten is an option, if we consolidate some of those classes and make the average class size at the upper elementaries 23-ish or in that ballpark, why wouldn't we do that? Because the benefits of full-day kindergarten are there. So that's what we did. So some of the grade sections of sixth grade that maybe for 100 students had 6 sections will now have 5. And that freed up a classroom and a teacher to have the space for kindergarten. Because if you had 4 kindergartens, right, 4 half-day teachers, that's 8 sessions. If you're going to have 8 sessions of full day, right, that would be 4 more classrooms. And with very minimal adjustments, every building was able to do that. There's 1 or 2 offs that are a problem, right? Washington, I think, may have been one off the top of my head. I don't know. If Mr. Shi had that list, he could point it out to me, but I don't think I shared that one with him.
Well, Lincoln would have been...
And Lincoln was one that needed 6, and we're building 10 classrooms. So other than Lincoln, I want to say it was Washington was the only one that had a one-off that we may have to move one of our self-contained programs to a building that has more space. So we're able to do it. The class sizes are a little bit bigger. They're still very much within the average, and they're reasonable. And as we talk to people, especially the kindergarten teachers, the benefit of having one group of children all day long more than outweighs any of the costs of having, a few more students. But in no way is it a large number. As you said when you came in, kindergarten by state code, anything over 25, you need a paraprofessional in those classrooms. We're nowhere near that. Great question, though.
Thank you, Mr. Patel.
Sure. Just to go off that point, if those schools that have the need of the classrooms, can we just go ahead and try to rent out some space somewhere to?
We're going to make it work. We won't even
Okay.
have to rent it
Awesome.
out unless there's something happens and the Lincoln Edition's not open. We won't have to do any of that. We can. The kids will be in their home school. We'll make it work.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Manesh?
I'll say one thing. First time we got a good presentation. For years, referendum came, and town didn't know what the hell's going on. And everybody says, you know what? Say no. Let them come back with another proposition. And that's been going on for 10 years. And I signed off on 4 of them where I said no. I didn't know what the hell am I giving you money for. So first time you did a good job. Now the one other thing I have is all years we were looking for BMWs, Mercedes, Teslas. Now we're settling for Chevy and Ford. I like it. That's where we should be. We are American, stay American. Now, Dr. Bragan said, we got one person bid for this. Did we advertise right? Because there's so many contractors in New Jersey who works for New York public schools. I could name you 6 of them who sits with me on a dinner table or a bar and brag about what school they built. Now they could do numbers a lot cheaper than ours. Can they work for us? I mean, they give big money to Murphy's election. I shouldn't be saying this on the camera, but they are the big supporters of Murphy, but they're working for New York City. So can they work here? Can we get them? You know, where are we doing our advertisement is number 1. The other thing is we're building 10 offices, and you say it's costing $7.5 million. But somewhere else, somebody just says it's costing $566 for a classroom. So why there's a discrepancy? In Thomas Medicine, we are saying 7.5. But somewhere else, I did the counting, and it says $566,666. Somebody's not paying attention. The other thing is, as he says, suite. Suite is in rich politician's office, rich 5-star hotels. Those are the suites. We got classrooms here, correct? Offices. So let's stick to those real names. I know we like to go high-powered Teslas, but we gotta stay put to the ground. You said you always find money. I hope you find my $450,000 for my 2 high schools, because that I'm not gonna let you sleep on. For 10 years, I wanted to do Oprah saying, give me a list of how much money did you paid in last 10 years for instrument to middle schools and high schools. But then I said, you know what? Why keep going in Oprah every time when you could do this on your own? So in this budget, I would request you, if you want us to win, because I've been in J.P. Stevens and Edison programs time after time, and you could ask my dear friend over there, who happens to be a principal of J.P. Stevens for years, that when we go there, one instrument always failed, and we had to fix it the next week. And we're spending $24,000 to $30,000 on fixing equipment. Why not save it? Just buy it once and save that money, so in the future they could buy on their own, and we don't have to give them again for 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patel.
He
Any
didn't
other
do just
questions?
just wanted to add, he didn't do just one thing right. He did a few things more right. So I just wanted to add on to
Yeah,
that.
and there was, before you arrived, there was a discussion about the discrepancy in cost per classroom. And it, basically, when there's multi-level classrooms, it's less expensive. I learned something as, yeah, I did the same thing, and I learned something tonight. Ms. Badovsky, welcome here.
Carol Podofsky, 39 Jonathan Drive. And I just want to follow up on what Mrs. Conway was explaining about kindergarten classrooms and first, second, third, fourth, and fifth grade classrooms. I want to tell you a little bit of my experience in Edison. I have taught as a reading specialist, which means I've taught at Ben Franklin, I've taught at Woodbrook for significant amounts of time and seen the students move from kindergarten to 5th grade and then on to middle school. I've seen them graduate. I've seen what colleges they go to. I've seen them in the marching band and what instruments they play. So I've seen these children all along. And when we were so lucky to get the chance to have full-day kindergarten, it was a great blessing on our students. But one of my jobs as a reading specialist is every child that enrolls in our schools, I get to sit down with and assess their ability, their English communication skills. And this went on for years. And sometimes we were here in this building till 11 o'clock at night. Sometimes it was in the home building. And some of the children were terrified. Some of the children were amazing. They could read me chapter books before they got into kindergarten. But what happened when we moved to full-day kindergarten is instead of having art, music, and gym for the students, which provides the classroom teachers with their legal break where they do some of the work that has to get done, they hired literacy enrichment teachers, they called them. And they basically, their job was to take the kids out and play with them so the teacher could work in her room undisturbed. But there were plans. We supposedly were doing things, but different things went on in different places. So now you bring all these children in. I've screened them. They're all different levels. Now they all go into kindergarten, and they're all day. So we expect them to have achieved more. So those classrooms we needed, we may have taken one out of the 5th grade, one out of the 4th grade, and those classes are a little larger. But Edison also has a transient population, and a lot of students, it's our second language learners. And so some of these children need a lot more help and everything. And what I found during the years following the full-day kindergarten was that we had more and more children who got the extra help of the reading specialist in grades 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We didn't work with kindergarten, so that was a non-issue. But more children were in need of extra support, so we have to be very, very careful with the time with the teacher that the kindergarten students have, with the curriculum and how well the teachers understand it and are trained in it, and the transition from one year to the next of how the students have progressed. Because then as reading specialists go in and are giving support to people in grades 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they don't have 6 children in an overcrowded 5th grade room to work with at the same time, and only 2 or 3 children in a 1st grade room, depending on whether they had full day and part day kindergarten. So that concerns me, is having enough room for all these children there. I loved that we got it when we had it. And having been a preschool teacher in Metuchen before I was working in Edison, I've seen kids come in at all different levels. But the most brilliant students that you have still need that all day with a teacher, learning how to do the things you do in school. I have a grandson now. And, when he learns his little things, like we put the lid back on our snack, that helps him be able to understand a textbook when he's in 8th grade or in high school or in college. It all builds. And so my field has been teaching reading all those years, and I found we had a real disconnect when we added and then took away full-day kindergarten, because we kept assuming we have first full-day kindergarten now, all these other children know more foundation things than we thought they did. And so we have to be sure that they do and keep on top of that. And just in case you wonder why I jumped all around, I brilliantly thought I was going to be a Latin major and I was going to teach Latin. And I was the best in the country. Only one person in the country got a scholarship to be a Latin teacher, and I got it. And I was so proud. And nobody was teaching Latin then. And then once I'm in Edison teaching as a reading specialist and forgot all the Latin I knew, then we added Latin back in here, and they needed teachers. But so I have jumped around because I started at a different area, but most of my time in Edison and in Long Branch and in Pennsgrove has been working with children learning to read, especially in K through 3. And I just really caution you on that class size thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Badowski. Any other comment? Okay. No, it's okay. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that's here, the administrative team, all of the hard work that it took to put together this presentation. Thank the board for a very productive meeting, I think. And I look forward to the next meeting, which will be April 26th. And that is both
6 o'clock.
at 6 o'clock caucus meeting, followed by a public action meeting where I'm sure we'll be happy to endorse this plan publicly. So thank you very much. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.